Hey everyone, Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and now it's time for episode 265 of Album of the Day, in which for today's album review, I'm going to be talking about the musical project of a English singer-songwriter who is a real bender of genre, mixing together elements of post-punk, jazz, and hip-hop, and trip-hop, and stuff like that. And also, he is an artist that has a pretty distinctive voice, which was noted by quite a few critics, including myself. Of course, I am talking about the project of singer-songwriter Archy Marshall, known as King Krule. And I'm here to review his latest full-length album, which was released on February 21st, 2020. It's his third studio album as King Krule. And the album is called Man Alive. And as you can see, I have the album on vinyl because I actually ordered it off of Amazon. Couldn't get it at a record store physically because of, COVID-19 quarantine. This is actually the first time I ever bought a King Krule album on vinyl. So I'm pretty happy about that. And plus, this album has easily one of my favorite album covers of 2020. Then there's the back. There's 14 tracks on the record, and it's over 42 minutes long, so pretty short record compared to his pretty long and ambitious last record, 2017's The Ooze. And as you can see, there's a photo of Archie on the back. In the gatefold, there's all these, what looks like photos of Archie and other people that contributed to the album, and all this crazy artwork too. Really cool. And I like how the album cover art is so good that I actually do have a little poster, little insert that just has the album cover. I just love to look at this. And there's the insert that has the vinyl. It has the liner notes at the bottom. Released on Matador Records, along with Archy Marshall's True Panther Sounds. Here's side A, and then there's side B. It sounds great on vinyl too. And that's the vinyl packaging for Man Alive, the new album from King Krule. So, if you've been following me since 2018, I actually reviewed Archy Marshall's music when I covered King Krule's 2017 album, The Ooze. And if you remember what I thought of it, I absolutely loved that record. It only grew on me the more I listened to it. It's definitely one of my favorite albums of 2017 and probably the decade as well, because I'm currently kind of processing what my favorites of the decade will be, which, that'll be a long ways away, but, I'm working on that. I loved how Archy Marshall went down a pretty ambitious, abstract, and very depressive and dark artistic path with that record. So of course I was definitely looking forward to hearing more of that kind of sound, even though I did have some pretty interesting trepidation leading up to this album. I thought the teaser tracks were good when I first heard them, but I was a little worried maybe this would be just a reiteration of The Ooze. It had similar ideas. It still felt very depressing and very dark. But they did grow on me the more I listened to them. And also the one teaser track that I did love right out of the gate is the track Cellular, which opens the record. I I love its combination of sounds. The twangy guitars, the kind of tense layers of synth, the growling bass, the beat I think syncopates with it all very nicely, and then of course Archy delivers his usual very, very deep and kind of deep and very smooth drawl. There's a television speaking to me. So because I loved that track so much, it definitely gave me a little more faith this was likely going to be a great album. And upon hearing Man Alive, I'm very pleased to say that it very much lived up to my more optimistic expectations that I had going into it. I can't say it's better than The Ooze. I still think The Ooze is King Krule's best album. But I do like how this record feels like a really good step forward. Maybe not really in terms of going in a different direction from its predecessor, but he ultimately goes for something more cohesive and direct and actually a little catchier too. It's cheer too, so it's definitely great to see an already pretty talented musician continue to improve and get better and better. Better. I already highlighted Cellular. The opening track is one of my favorites here. Also love the second cut on here. Supermarche opens up with this kind of reggae-tinged bass line and this kind of echoey beat over some kind of dejected vocals that seem to sing about like poverty in like his area, his home, and stuff like that. And he eventually builds up in the song these layers of like squealing guitar effects, and then just this very like harrowing mix of twangy guitars and tense keyboards, and he is just like screaming his heart out. It's a very powerful moment, given that the song is only 2.5 minutes. The next track, Stoned Again, is definitely one of my favorite tracks on here. I love how the song embraces his kind of sludgier side, from the bass line to just how kind of aggressive his vocal performance on here is. It's sort of talking about, smoking weed and doing stuff to kind of deal with his feelings, but yet also kind of feeling like it's, not really helping him at all. Like he's feeling kind of unsanitary while doing it. Which I love that self-awareness that he brings on here, and I think his Yelp's vocals only make it that much more powerful over killer layers of post-punk guitars and guitars, fuzzy bass, drums, and also some really just awesome reverb saxophone, which that's another pretty big selling point for me, is anytime saxophone appears on here, it's going to be fantastic. The next track, Comet Face, actually goes for something a little more abstract and creative in terms of its ideas. In the background, I'm hearing what sounds like somebody talking, but it's like sped up, or maybe even looped backwards, and also sounds like it's got a little bit of pitch shifting. It's a really cool effect over the other kind of driving, more conventional instrumentation. And when the saxophone hits on this track, I am also just in complete and total heaven. And the reverb just only sets it on fire that much more. There are a couple of lulls that sort of follow this pretty big highlight for me on the record. The track The Dream is pretty decent, but it does seem like an interlude that could be extended a little longer. It feels a little half-baked and, kind of ends in an awkward way. And then there's the track Perfecto Miserable, which is definitely one of the weaker cuts on the record. The reverb guitars and the bass and drums just sound a little bit dull on this track, in my opinion. opinion, even if midway through the track, Archy's vocals, I think, hit a little bit of a high, for sure. And this is even one of the songs where the lyrics feel a little bit underwritten, too. It's probably my least favorite track on the record, honestly. But luckily, the most senseless track on the record is followed by probably one of the best tracks on here, Omen, Alone Omen 3, which was the second teaser track from this thing. And this is one of the songs that got me thinking, okay, maybe Archy's gonna maybe be a little more joyful on this record. Because on this song, he actually sounds a little more optimistic on here, even if it's not necessarily a very pretty moment on the record, as Anthony Fantano did say. And I love the layers of instrumentation. I love how the guitar is a little out of tune, but really adds to the emotion that he brings to the song. And it's also actually one of the catchier songs on the record, albeit definitely not one that's gonna be, stuck in your head for a while, because it is definitely very dark, and I also love the kind of sudden moments of backward synths and stuff like that, and also the ending with the kind of echoey backup vocals, I think, is really nice too. And it transitions very smoothly into the next track, Slinky. Track Slinky, which definitely goes for something much lonelier and a lot more downtrodden, more downtrodden. And I love the jazzier feel Archy goes for on this track. And I find this kind of sound really channels his loneliness and his feelings that much more. I just love Archy's ability to just really live in his feelings, which he embodies very well in his music. There's also a really cool midsection where we get some killer drums and saxophone in the mix. As well as this very powerful performance from Archy. And also really interesting mixing techniques going on in here. I mean, Archy's vocals actually aren't like super in your face in the mix, but I think if they were even closer in the mix, there wouldn't be as much of an emotional impact from this song. The next track, Airport Antenatal Airplane, definitely very much reminds me of the Ooze a little bit. It definitely sounds like the kind of thing that's either like slowed down or even recorded in Liquid or something like that. And that is a compliment, by the way. And I also love kind of how creative the sounds on here are. I think I'm hearing like what sounds like thunderclouds in the background that as like percussion or the beat on this track. It sounds really cool. And also the way that the song builds up into something kind of cinematic but also very cold is really nice too. It's not the best track on the record, but I just love how it showcases Archy's ability to make some of the smoothest music I've heard in my entire life. Another track on here that reminds me eerily of the Ooze is the track Don't Let the Dragon Drag On, which is the first teaser for this album. And this is yet another lull for me. I mean, this song is kind of one of the reasons why I kind of was a little bit worried this record would just be the Ooze Part 2 and wouldn't feel like a step forward. Even if it is a very quality track and does deliver King's usual kind of smooth demeanor. demeanor. And also, I thought the kind of Wicker Man inspired music video was kind of cool. It's kind of cool. So again, not a bad song. I think it's decent. It's just like, it feels like could have been on any one of his other projects. But then following this, we do get actually my favorite track on here, which is Theme for the Cross, which even though it is mostly instrumental, it really cuts deep. I love how it opens up with these kind of atmospheric keys over what sounds like somebody whispering. It kind of sounds like ASMR or something. And then the synths build up with these killer layers of reverb saxophone. It's saxophone. It is just like so soothing in my opinion. And that's the funny thing. Like even though King Krule's music does take on some pretty uneasy subjects, it still like is the kind of thing that kind of slows my blood and sort of relaxes me a little bit. And this song I think is a perfect example of that. And then Archie goes in with these melancholy pianos and kind of and really interesting spoken word where I don't quite understand everything that comes out of his mouth, but I do really feel what he's saying, and really that's all that matters. And even that part at the end where it transitions into these field recordings of cars passing by, I think really adds to just the downright loneliness of the song, especially as the instrumental slowly fades out, so it sounds as though Archie is just singing out in the street and singing and just sitting out in the street like a homeless man, waiting for someone to give him more money. And I think it transitions very well into the excellent Underclass, which is yet another favorite track of mine on this record. It's mine. I also love how the song embodies a similar approach shown on Alone Omen 3, where Archie is kind of feeling a little self-aware and even joyous, even as he's singing about demons, following him all the time. Following him. Love the guitars, love the drums. I think the layers of saxophone are great. I'm pretty sure in the midsection I'm hearing 10 saxophones at once. Really showing this album's very great ability at layering instruments. The next track, Energy Fleets, is yet another track that kind of serves as more of an interlude to stir everything together, but actually very cohesive too. And it is very beautiful and feels like a kind of triumphant victory lap, which I do really like. But it's also very weird with its kind of layers of what sounds like pitch shifted or vocoder backup vocals on there, as well as really cool saxophone, and it transitions very beautifully into another one of my favorite cuts, which is the closer, Please Complete Thee, which sees Archie goes for a different kind of vocal on this song. As Anthony Fantano did say in his review, he's not doing that usual kind of deep, drawl that he usually does. Instead, the vocal on this track sounds much smaller and kind of lonelier, and I think it adds to the emotion on this track, I think, very well over the kind of tense and sort of dreary synth chord. And he's sort of saying, so he brings a lot of depth as he sings, "This place doesn't move me, everything seems to be numb this around." I really feel what he's saying there. And also, the song has two pretty cool bridges. There's one point in the song that's got this spaghetti western inspired guitar and these kind of lo-fi layers of percussion that sound just very like tense and insecure. And then the song closes very gorgeously with some bluesy slide guitars and bright synth chords. Really a satisfying way to end the record. So yeah, I definitely very much enjoyed Man Alive. It definitely I think solidifies Archy Marshall as a very inventive figure in indie music right now. I mean, and this is coming from someone who doesn't really listen to much jazz or trip hop or something like that. But then again, his roots do kind of come from post-punk, so, and I do love that stuff, so it kind of makes sense. I kind of, bought into his sound dating all the way back to 2016 when I first heard some of 6 Feet Beneath the Moon. Feet Beneath the Moon. Like I said, it's not better than the Used. I still stand by the fact that I do think the Used is Archy at his most potent. But then again, I am actually seeing people who maybe didn't care for the Used at all actually enjoying this record. So it's cool to see like a bunch of people really digging this record because it really deserves that critical acclaim. So light 8 out of 10. Check out Man Alive. It's definitely another very satisfying moment in the King Krule canon. And I'll see you for episode 266.